Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in. Please take a seat, pick your nicest spot, and welcome to the reading stream. Today we are going to be reading the genderbent Twilight book, Life and Death. This book was very, very kindly brought to me as a gift by my good friend and mod of this channel, E-Girl. Let me go through chat quick and say hi to people. Waffle Boy, hi, congrats on being the first round. Anna, enjoy your lurk. Hi E-Girl, hi Dakota, have a good lurk. Kai, have a good lurk as well. Enjoy. I've been very careful about which music I select today, so we'll have to see how this goes. I've got some music that's playing now, and then while I'm reading, I found a 2-hour-long playlist called a Comfort Twilight Reading playlist. And the comments of people were talking about how they finished reading certain books while this was playing in the background. So I will be using that mostly as background music this stream, in fact. There it is. So my throat is a little bit getting there. Forgive me if I have to mute at any time to cough or throw up or anything else. Or sniffle. I'm still coming to the end of my illness, so we'll have to see how it goes. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about before I go in. This stream was unlocked as an incentive during Charity Pride Month last year, and I'm finally able to get around to it now that I have the book for it and now that I have the art made. The artist has been tagged in the pinned message, so if you'd like to go check them out, they were very lovely to talk to and do the commission with, so very lovely person. I don't remember how much the commission, not commission, how much the incentive was. Let me see if I can find it. Hi Casper. You did? What? Excuse me. You did what? For who? That's so lovely, what? Yes, £50. This was the first incentive goal that you managed to reach, so thank you everyone during Pride Month who helped. Reach those. If you're not in the Discord, I would love to see it, Casper. That's amazing. Excuse me? Yes, I am, mostly. I'm both, in fact. I'm getting to the end of the sickness and I'm pretty tired, so forgive me for yawning as well, if I have to do that at all. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Shall we get started? I want you to know I have not even opened this book yet. So this will be my first time actually opening it. Hang on, can do some ASMR. That sure is paper. You know what? I'm not going to read you the blurb, because I don't want the names of some of these characters to be spoiled. So, I mostly hope if you're watching this stream, you know Twilight, or you'll be familiar enough with Twilight to understand the differences in this. Because I feel like that's where part of the joy of this is going to come from. The rest of the joy is just going to come from listening to me, I suppose. So, also, one final forgive me for not being good at reading. Okay, with that said, let's read. Let's open the book first. There's a foreword. Should I read that? Is that important enough to read? I don't think so. I think this is more directed to whoever buys the book. So, if you want to read the foreword, buy the book. Hi, Alai. Have good luck, Alai. Thank you. Here we go. One second. Oh, there's another. No, there's not. I'm going to pause the ad from starting quick. I didn't think about ads. I'll probably take breaks during ads. Okay. If his destiny be strange, it is also sublime. From Jules Verne, in the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Preface. I'd never given much thought to dying, though I'd had reason enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I would never imagined it like this. I stared across the long room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and she looked pleasantly back at me. At least it was a good way to die. In the place of someone else. Someone I loved. Noble, even. That ought to count for something. I knew that if I'd ever gone to Forks, I wouldn't be about to die now. But, terrified as I was, I couldn't bring myself to regret the decision. When life offers you a dream so far beyond any of your expectations, it's not reasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. The hunter smiled in a friendly way as she sauntered forward to kill me. Have good luck, Casper. One second. Okay. Chapter 1. First Sight. January 17th, 2005. My mom drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down, though it was January everywhere else. Give me a second. Okay, sorry. January 17th, 2005. My mom drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. Though it was January everywhere else, it was 75 degrees in Phoenix, and the sky was bright blue. I had on my favourite t-shirt, the Monty Python one with the swallows and the coconut that Mom got me 2 Christmases ago. It didn't quite fit anymore, but that didn't matter. I wouldn't be needing t-shirts again soon. In the Olympic Peninsula of northwest Washington state, a small town named Forks exists under a near constant cover of clouds. It rains on this significant town more than any other place in the United States of America. It was from this town and its depressing gloom that my mom escaped with me when I was only a few months old. It was in this town that I'd been forced to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally started making ultimatums. These past 3 summers, my dad, Charlie, vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. Yet, somehow, I now found myself exiled to Forks for the rest of my high school education. A year and a half. 18 months. Oh, the sound of me flipping a page. Lovely. Nice. Very nice. It felt like a prison sentence. 18 months, hard time. When I slammed the car door behind me, it made a sound like the clang of iron bars locking into place. Okay, just a tad melodramatic there. I have an overreactive imagination, as my mom was fond of telling me. And, of course, this was my choice. Self-imposed exile. Oh, sorry. I think we just had ads and I didn't realise. Sorry. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the dry heat and the big sprawling city. And I loved living with my mom where I was needed. You don't have to do this, my mom said to me, the last of 100 times just before I got to the TSA post. Oh, I would take an adequate amount of sips, my man, don't worry. Don't worry yourself. Don't worry yourself. But thank you. It's because I already sound like my throat's fucked. Also, hi Jay, hi. My mom says we look so much alike that I could use her for a shaving mirror. Her chin is pointy and her lips full, which is not like me. But we do have exactly the same eyes. On her they're childlike, so wide and pale blue, which makes her look like my sister rather than my mom. We get that all the time, and though she pretends not to, she loves it. On me, that pale blue is yet less youthful and more unresolved. Staring at those wide, worried eyes so much like my own, I felt panicked. I'd taken care of my mom for my whole life. I mean, I'm sure there must have been a time, probably when I was still in diapers, that I wasn't in charge of the bills and paperwork and cooking and general level-headedness, but I couldn't remember it. Oh no. Oh no, we just had the ads. Okay, sorry. I've not been paying attention to the ads, sorry. If you need to sleep, then please do. It would be quite the compliment if you did. Fine. I'll take a sippy just for you, Jay. That liquid going down my throat. Just for you, my man. Just for you. Was leaving my mom to fend for herself really the right thing to do? It had seemed like it was. During the months I'd struggled towards this decision, but I felt all kinds of wrong now. Of course, she had Phil these days, so the bills would probably get paid on time. There would be food in the fridge, gas in the car, and someone to call when she got lost. She didn't need me as much anymore. I want to go. I lied. I've never been a good liar, but I've been saying this like so much lately that it almost sounded convincing now. Tell Charlie I said hi. I will. I'll see you soon, she promised. You can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. But I knew what it would cost her to do that. Don't worry about me, I insisted. It'll be great. I love you, Mom. She hugged me tightly for a minute, and then I walked through the metal detectors, and she was gone. It's a 3-hour flight from Houston? It's a 3-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle, another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles, and then an hour drive back down to Forks. Flying's never bothered me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, I was a little worried about. Charlie had really been pretty decent about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him sort of permanently this time. He'd already gotten me registered for high school and was going to help me get a car. But it would be awkward. Neither of us would what you'd call extroverted. Probably a necessary thing for living with my mother. But aside from that, what was there to say? It wasn't like I'd kept the way I'd felt about Forks a secret. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was raining. It wasn't an omen, just inevitable. I'd said goodbye to the sun. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting too. Charlie is police chief swan to the good people of Forks. My primary motivation behind buying a car. Despite my serious lack of funds, was that I hated driving around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Nothing slows down traffic like a cop. I stumbled off the plane into Charlie's awkward one-armed hug. I add, yes, I am currently reading. It's good to see you, Beau, he said, smiling as he automatically steadied me. We patted each other's shoulders, embarrassed, and then stepped back. You haven't changed much. How's Renee? Mom's great. It's good to see you, Dad. I wasn't supposed to call him Charlie to his face. Also, I'll say now, as much as I'd love to be doing character voices, and I would if I would be playing a game, I'm not going to do character voices this time. Just because I can't. I don't have it in me right now. You really feel okay about leaving her? We both understood that this question wasn't about my own personal happiness. It was about whether I was shirking my responsibility to look after her. This was the reason Charlie'd never fought Mom about custody. He knew she needed me. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't sure. Fair enough. I only had 2 big duffel bags. Most of my Arizona clothes were too permeable for the Washington climate. My mum and I had pooled our resources to supplement my winter wardrobe, but it still wasn't much. I could handle both of them, but Charlie insisted on taking one. It threw my balance off a little. Not that I was ever really balanced, especially since the growth spurt. My foot caught on the lip of the exit door and my bag swung out and hit the guy trying to get in. Oh, sorry! The guy wasn't much older than me, and he was a lot shorter. But he stepped up to my chest with his chin raised high. I could see tattoos on both sides of his neck. A small woman with hair dyed solid black stared menacingly at me from his other side. Sorry, she repeated, like my apology had been offensive somehow. Yeah. Then the woman noticed Charlie, who was in uniform. Charlie didn't even have to say anything. He just looked at the guy, who backed up a half step and suddenly seemed a lot younger, and then the girl, whose sticky red lips settled into a pout. Without another word, they ducked around me and headed into the tiny terminal. Charlie and I both shrugged at the same time. It was funny how we had some of the same mannerisms when we didn't spend much time together. Maybe it was genetic. I found a good car for you. Really cheap, Charlie announced when we were strapped into the cruiser and on our way. What kind of car? I asked, suspicious of the way he said good car for you, as opposed to just good car. Well, it's a truck actually. A Chevy. Where did you find it? Do you remember Bonnie Black down at La Push? La Push is a small Indian reservation on the nearby coastline. No. She and her husband used to go fishing with us during the summer, Charlie prompted. That'll explain why I don't remember her. I do a good job of blocking painful things on my memory. She's in a wheelchair now, Charlie continued when I didn't respond, except she can't drive anymore, and she offered to sell me her truck cheap. What year is it? I could see from the change in his expression that this was the question he was hoping I wouldn't ask. Well, Bonnie's had a lot of work done on the engine. It's only a few years old, really. Did he think I'd give up that easily? When did she buy it? She bought it in 1984, I think. Did she buy it new? Well, no. I think it was new in the early 60s, or late 50s at the earliest, he admitted sheepishly. Dad, I don't really know anything about cars. I wouldn't be able to fix anything that broke, and I couldn't afford a mechanic. Really, Bo, the thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore. The thing, I thought to myself. That had possibilities, as a nickname at the very least. Now cheap is cheap. After all, that part was the deal killer. Well, son, I kind of already bought it for you, as a homecoming gift. Charlie glanced sideways at me with a hopeful expression. Wow. Free. That might not be the expression. That might have been, wow, free. You didn't need to do that, Dad. I was hoping to buy myself a car. Oh, I don't mind. I want you to be happy here. He was looking ahead of the road when he said this. Charlie had never been comfortable with expressing his emotions out loud. Another thing we had in common. So I was looking straight ahead as I responded. That's amazing, Dad. Thanks, I really appreciate it. And I need to add that he was talking about impossibilities. Wouldn't help anything for him to suffer along with me. I never looked at a free truck in the mouth, or rather, engine. Well now, you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my thanks. We exchanged a few more comments about the weather, which was wet, and that was pretty much it for the conversation. We stared out the windows. It was probably beautiful or something. Everything was green, the trees were covered in moss, both the trunks and the branches. The ground blanketed with ferns. When the air had turned green by the time it filtered down the leaves, Even the air had turned green by the time it filtered down through the leaves. It was too green. An alien planet. Eventually, we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in the small 2-bedroom house that he'd bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. Those were the only kind of days their marriage had. The early ones. There, parked on the street in front of the house that had never changed, was my new to me, truck. It was a faded red colour with big, curvy fenders and a rounded cab. And I loved it. I wasn't really a car guy, so I was kind of surprised by my own reaction. I mean, I didn't even know if it would run, but I could see myself in it. Plus, it was one of those solid iron monsters that never gets damaged. The kind you see at the scene of an accident, paint unscratched, surrounded by the pieces of the foreign car that it just destroyed. Wow, Dad, it's awesome. Thanks. Serious enthusiasm this time. Not only was the truck strangely cool, but now I wouldn't have to walk 2 miles in the rain to school in the morning, or accept a ride in the cruiser, which was obviously worst case scenario. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly. I'm glad you like it. Embarrassed again. It took only one trip to get all my stuff upstairs. I got the west bedroom that faced out over the front yard. The room was familiar. It had belonged to me since I was born. The wooden floor, the light blue walls, the peaked ceiling, the faded blue and white checkered curtains around the window. These were all part of my childhood. The only changes Charlie had ever made were switching the crib for a bed and adding a desk as I grew. The desk now held a second-hand computer, with the phone line for the modern modem stapled along the floor to the nearest phone jack. This was one of my mother's requirements, so that we could stay in touch. The rocking chair from my baby days was still in the corner. I'm curious about something. This is out of book. Me, currentlycrowe, me reading this. I wonder how much of this is the same or similar as the original book. Because so far, nothing I'm reading here requires a gender change. Everything seems like it would be the same. Oh no, it's okay. You came at the right time, Starry. Have a good luck. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you, thank you. I appreciate everyone being here and lurking. Thank you a lot. Going back into it now. There was only one small bathroom at the top of the stairs, which I'd have to share with Charlie. But I'd have to share with my mom before, and that was definitely worse. She had a lot more stuff, and she doggedly resisted all my attempts to organise any of it. One of the best things about Charlie is that he doesn't hover. He left me alone to unpack and get settled, which would have been totally impossible for my mom. It was nice to be alone, not to have to smile and look comfortable. A relief to stare out of the window at the sheeted rain and let my thoughts get dark. Hi, Gusty. Hi, Gusty. Hi. Forks High School had just 358 students. There were more than 700 people in my junior class. Back home. Thank you, Gusty. All the kids here had grown up together. Their grandparents had been toddlers together. I would be the new kid from the big city, something to stare at and whisper about. Maybe if I'd been one of the cool kids, I could make this work for me. Come in all popular, homecoming king styles. But there was no hiding the fact that I was not that guy. Not the football star, not the class president, not the bad boy on the motorcycle. I was a twink. I was the kid who looked like he shouldn't be good at basketball. I was the kid who looked like he should be good at basketball until I started walking. The kid who got shoved into the lockers until it suddenly shot up 8 inches sophomore year. The kid who was too quiet and too pale, who didn't know anything about gaming or cars or baseball statistics or anything else I was supposed to be into. Unlike other guys, I didn't have a ton of free time for hobbies. I had a checkbook to balance, a clogged drain to snake, and a week's groceries to shop for. Or I used to. Hi Helios, have a good luck, thank you. So I didn't relate well to people my age. Maybe the truth was that I didn't relate well to people, period. Even my mother, who I was closest to of anyone on the planet, never really understood me. Sometimes I wondered if I was seeing the same things through my eyes that the rest of the world was seeing through theirs. Like, maybe what I saw as green was what everyone else saw as red. Maybe I smelled vinegar when they smelled coconut. Maybe there was a glitch in my brain. But the cause didn't matter. All that mattered was the effect. And tomorrow would just be the beginning. I'm gonna take a sip quick. Delightful. I didn't sleep well that night, even after I finally got my head to shut up. The constant whooshing of the rain and wind across the roof wouldn't fade into the background. I pulled the old quilt over my head and later added the pillow too. But I couldn't fall asleep until after midnight, when the rain finally settled into a quiet drizzle. Thick fog was all I could see out my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me. You could never see the sky here. It was like that prison cage I imagined. Gonna do my stretches as well quick. Hope you could feel all my intimate bones breaking then. Breakfast with Charlie was quiet. He wished me good luck at school. I thanked him, knowing his hope was a waste of time. Good luck tended to avoid me. Charlie left first, after the police station, that was his wife and family. After he left, I sat at the old square oak table in one of the 3 unmatching chairs and stared at the familiar kitchen, with its dark panelled walls, bright yellow cabinets, and white linoleum floor. Thank you for those streak, Gusty. Nothing had changed. My mum had painted the cabinets 18 years ago, trying to bring some sunshine to the house. Over the small fireplace in the adjoining microscopic family room was a row of pictures. First, a wedding picture of Charlie and my mom in Las Vegas. Then, one of the 3 of us in the hospital after I was born, taken by a helpful nurse. Followed by the procession of my school pictures up to this year's. Those are embarrassing to look at. The bad haircuts, the braces, years, the acne that had finally cleared up. I would have to see what I could do to get Charlie to put them elsewhere. At least while I was living here. It was impossible, being in this house, not to realize that Charlie had never gotten over my mom. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to be too early to school, but I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I put on my jacket, thick, non-breathing plastic like a biohazard suit, and headed out into the rain. It was just drizzling still, not enough to soak me through immediately as I reached for the house key that was always hidden under the eave by the door and locked up. The sloshing of my new waterproof boots sounded weird. I missed the sound of gravel as I walked. Sorry, I missed the normal crunch of gravel as I walked. Inside the truck it was nice and dry. Either Bonnie or Charlie had obviously cleaned it up, but the tan, upholstered seats still smelled faintly of tobacco, gasoline, and peppermint. The engine started quickly, which was a relief, but loudly, roaring to life, then idling at top volume. Well, a truck this old was bound to have a flaw. The antique radio worked, a bonus I hadn't expected. Finding the school wasn't difficult, like most other things. It was just off the highway. It wasn't obvious at first that it was a school. Only the sign, which declared it to be the Forks High School, clued me in. It looked like a collection of matching houses, built with maroon-coloured bricks. There were so many trees and shrubs I couldn't see its size at first. Where was the feel of the institution, I thought? Where was the chain-link fences, the metal detectors? I parked by the first building, which had a small sign over the door reading "Front Office." No one else parked there, so I was sure it was off limits. But I decided I would get directions instead of circling around in the rain like an idiot. Inside it was brightly lit, and warmer than I'd hoped. The office was small. There was a little waiting area with padded folded chairs, orange flecked commercial carpet, notices and awards cluttering the walls, and a big clock ticking loudly. Plants grew everywhere in large plastic pots, as if there wasn't enough greenery outside. The room was cut in half by a long counter, cluttered with wire baskets full of papers and brightly coloured flyers taped to the front. There were 3 desks behind the counter. A round, balding man in glasses sat at one. He was wearing a t-shirt, which immediately made me feel overdressed for this weather. Thank you, Helio. Thank you a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. The balding man looked up. "How can I help you?" "I'm Bo Swan," I informed him, and saw the quick recognition in his eyes. I was expected. Already the subject of gossip. The chief's son, the one with the unstable mob, come home at last. "Of course," he said. He dug through a leaning stack of papers on his desk till he found the ones he was looking for. "I have your schedule right here, Beaufort, and a map of the school." He brought several sheets to the counter to show me. It's Bo, please." "Oh, sure, Bo." He went through my classes for me, highlighting the best route to each on the map, and gave me a slip to have each teacher sign, which I was to bring back at the end of the day. He smiled at me and hoped, like Charlie, that I'd like it here in Forks. I smiled back as convincingly as I could. When I went back out to my truck, other students were starting to arrive. I drove around the school, following the line of traffic. Most of the cars were older, like mine, nothing flashy. At home, I'd lived in one of the few lower-income neighborhoods that were included in the Paradise Valley district. It was a common thing to see a new Mercedes or Porsche in the student lot. The nicest car here was a brand new silver Volvo, and it stood out. Still, I cut the engine as soon as I was in a spot, so that the ear-splitting volume wouldn't draw attention to me. I looked at the map in the truck, trying to memorize it now. Hopefully I wouldn't have to walk around with it stuck in front of my nose all day. I stuffed everything in my bag, slung the strap over my shoulder, and sucked in a huge breath. "It won't be that bad," I lied to myself. Seriously though, this wasn't a life and death situation. It was just high school. It's not like anyone was going to bite me. Sure. It's not like this is a vampire school with vampires, where I get bit by vampires. No. I finally exhaled and stepped out of the truck. " 'Cause 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 ' I pulled my hood down over my face as I walked to the sidewalk, crowded with teenagers. My plain black jacket didn't stand out, I was glad to see, though there wasn't much I could do about my height. I hunched my shoulders and kept my head down. Once I got around the cafeteria, Building 3 was easy to spot. A large black 3 was painted on a white square on the east corner. I followed 2 unisex raincoats through the door. The classroom was small. The people in front of me stopped just inside the door to hang up their coats on the long row of hooks. I copied them. There were 2 girls, one a porcelain-coloured blonde, the other also pale, with light brown hair. At least my skin wouldn't be a standout here. I took the slip up to the teacher, a narrow woman with thinning hair whose desk had a nameplate identifying her as Miss Mason. She gawked at me when she saw my name, discouraging, and I could see the blood rush into my face. I could feel the blood rush into my face, no doubt forming unattractive splotches under my cheeks and neck. At least she sent me to an empty desk at the back without introducing me to the class. I tried to fold myself into the little desk as inconspicuously as possible. It was harder for my new classmates to stare at me in the back, but somehow they managed. I kept my eyes down on the reading list that my teacher had given me. It was pretty basic. Bronte, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Faulkner. I'd already read everything. That was comforting. And boring. I wondered if my mom would send me my folder of old essays, or if she would think that was cheating. I went through different arguments with her in my head while the teacher droned on. When the bell rang, a pale, skinny girl with skin problems and black hair and an oil slick leaned across the aisle to talk to me. "You're both at Swan, aren't you?" She gave up the vibe of an overly helpful chess club type. "Beau," I corrected. Everyone within a 3-seat radius of me turned to look at me. "What's your next class?" she asked. I had to check my bag. Government with Jefferson, in Building 6. There was nowhere to look without meeting curious eyes. "I'm heading to Building 4. I could show you the way." Definitely over-helpful. "I'm Erica," she added. I forced a smile. "Thanks." We got our jackets and headed out into the rain, which had picked up. Several people seemed to be walking too close behind us, like they were trying to eavesdrop or something. I hoped I wasn't getting paranoid. "So, this is a lot different than Phoenix, huh?" she asked. "Very. It doesn't rain much there, does it?" 3 or 4 times a year. "Wow. What must that be like?" she wondered. "Sunny," I told her. "You don't look very tan." "My mother is part albino." She studied my face uneasily, and I stifled a groan. It looked like clouds and a sense of humour didn't mix. A few months of this and I'd forget how to use sarcasm. We walked back around the cafeteria to the south buildings by the gym. Erica followed me right to the door, though it was clearly marked. "Well, good luck," she said as I touched the handle. "Maybe we'll have some classes together." She sounded hopeful. I smiled at her, in what I hoped was not an encouraging way, and went inside. The rest of the morning passed in the same way. My trigonometry teacher, Miss Varna, who I would have disliked anyway, just because of the subject she taught, was the only one who made me stand in front of the class and introduce myself. I stammered, went splotchy red, and tripped over my own boots on the way to my seat. After 2 classes, I started to recognize some of the faces in each room. There was always someone braver than the others who would introduce themselves and ask me questions about how I was liking forks. I tried to be diplomatic, but I mostly just lied a lot. At least I never needed the map. In every class, the teacher started out calling me Beaufort, and though I corrected them immediately, it was depressing. It'd take me years to live down Beaufort. Thank you so much, Grandpa, for dying just months before I was born and making my mom feel obligated to honour you. No one at home even remembered that Beau was just a nickname anymore. Now I had to start all over again. One guy sat next to me in both Trig and Spanish, and he had not walked with me to the cafeteria for lunch. He was short, not even up to my shoulder, but his crazy curly hair made up some of the difference between our heights. I couldn't remember his name, so I smiled and nodded as he rattled on about teachers and classes. I didn't try to keep up. We sat at the end of the table with several of his friends, who he introduced to me. Couldn't complain about the manners here. I forgot all their names as soon as he said them. They seemed to think it was cool that he'd invited me. The girl from English, Erica, waved at me from across the room, and they all laughed, already the butt of the joke. It was probably a new record for me, but none of them seemed mean-spirited about it. It was there, sitting in the lunchroom, trying to make conversation with seven curious strangers, that I first saw them. Hi, Ari. Hi. You're lucky I'm not doing this in the morning. You're lucky I'm not doing this stream at like 3 AM for you, Ari. I'm gonna take a drink quick. I hope you're all enjoying this so far. Divine! This is a great time for you to come in. I'm literally just taking a drink. Hi, Divine. Welcome in. Hi, Raiders. What were you doing today? Let me... Well, at least we know for certain now that at least one person here today looks absolutely divine. Hi, welcome in. If you'd here to raid and run, please feel free. We are reading through... Ooh, Twilight. We are reading through Twilight. Minecraft roleplay. Ooh, how was that? I've never done it before, so I hope you had fun. Yes, if you need to raid and run, look after yourself, please feel free. If you wish to stay and listen to me read, you're also very welcome to. I appreciate you bringing the raid in very, very much. This stream I'm doing now was an incentive from Charity Pride Month, back when we did that. Mostly building, of course. Well, we're still on chapter 1. Somehow still on chapter 1. Chapter 1's long, actually. A lot of setting the scene, introducing characters, making it clear how depressed and sad and grouchy the main character is. But yes, we are reading the genderbent Twilight book. Life and Death. I'll stay and lurk. I've been streaming for almost 7 hours, and anything, please eat. Please go eat. That'd be very much appreciated. I'm gonna take another sip. Is it just me, or has water been tasting really good recently? Like last night I had... what's the word? Purified. Is it purified? No. When you put water into a thing and it like clears it out of all the bad stuff, and you can just drink it pure. I had that for tap water, and it was lovely. Genuinely, the feeling of it going down my mouth was so good. Filtered, yes, I had filtered tap water. It was that I'd left in the fridge for a bit. I didn't even leave it in the fridge, I just had it straight from it. It was really nice, actually. Genuinely. Okay, I'm going to continue reading now, but thank you so much for the raid, Divine. I appreciate it very much, thank you. It was here, sitting in the lunchroom, trying to make conversation with 7 strangers, that I first saw them. They were seated in the corner of the cafeteria, as far away from where I sat as possible in the long room. There were 5 of them. They weren't talking, they weren't eating. They each had a tray of food in front of them. They weren't gawking at me like most of the other students, so it was safe to stare at them. But it was none of these things that caught my attention. They didn't look anything alike. There were 3 girls. One I could tell was super tall, even sitting down, maybe as tall as I was. Her legs went on forever. She looked like she might be the captain of the volleyball team, and I was pretty sure you wouldn't want to get in the way of one of her spikes. She had dark curly hair, pulled down in a messy ponytail. Another had hair the colour of honey, hanging to her shoulders. She was not quite so tall as the brunette, but still probably taller than most of the other guys at my table. There was something intense about her. Edgy. It was kind of weird. But for some reason, she made me think of this actress I'd seen in an action movie a few weeks ago, who took down a dozen guys with a machete. I remembered thinking... Right. I remembered thinking that I didn't buy it. There was no way the actress could have taken on that many bad guys in one. But I thought now that I might have brought it all of them. But now I thought that I might have brought it all if the character had been played by this girl. The last was smaller, her hair somewhere between red and brown, but different than either, kind of metallic somehow, and bronzy colour. She looked younger than the other 2, who could have been in college easy. The 2 guys were opposites. The taller one was definitely taller than me. I'd guessed 6'5" or even more. Was clearly the school's star athlete and the prom king. And the guy who always had dibs on whatever equipment he wanted in the height room. His straight gold hair was wound to a bun on the back of his head, and there was nothing feminine about it. Somehow it made him look even more like a man. He was clearly too cool for this school, or any other I could imagine. The shorter guy was wiry. His dark hair buzzed so short it was just a shadow on top across his scalp. The shorter girl, totally different, and yet they were all exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all students living in this sunless town. Paler than me, the albino. They all had dark eyes. From here they looked black, despite the range in their hair colours. There were deep shadows under all their eyes, purple shadows like bruises. Maybe the 5 of them had just pulled an all-nighter, or maybe they were recovering from broken noses. Except that their noses, all their features were straight, angular. But that wasn't why I couldn't look away. I stared because their faces, so different, so similar, were all insanely, inhumanly beautiful. The girls and the guys both. Beautiful. They were faces you never saw in real life, just airbrushed in magazines and on billboards, or in a museum, painted by an old master as the face of an angel. It was hard to believe they were real. I'm gonna do my stretches. Quick. Oh, there's an ad break. Perfect time to take a moment. I didn't even see that. How are people finding this so far? And yes, I'll come back to reading when we're out of the ads. But I hope people have been enjoying this. I think that's my first yawn of the night. It is 10 p.m. for me, so I'm not surprised. So cozy, I'm glad. I'm really glad. It is the first voice stream I've done in like over a week. So, okay, we're back from ads. I'm gonna get back to it. I decided the most beautiful of all was the smaller girl with the bronze-coloured hair. Though I expected the female half of the student body would vote for the movie star blonde guy. They would be wrong though. I mean, all of them were gorgeous, but the girl was something more than just beautiful. She was absolutely perfect. It was an upsetting, disturbing kind of perfection. It made my stomach uneasy. Thank you, Gusty. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gusty. They were all looking away from each other, away from the rest of the students, away from anything in particular as far as I could tell. It reminded me of models posed oh so artistically for an ad. Aesthetic NUI. As I watched, the wiry skinhead guy rose with his tray, an open soda, untouched apple, and walked away with a quick, graceful lope that belonged on a runway. I watched, wondering if they had a dance company here in town, till he bumped his tray and glided through the back door, faster than I would have thought possible. My eyes darted back to the others, who hadn't changed. Who are they? Who are they? I asked the guy from my Spanish class, whose name I'd forgotten, as he looked up to see who I meant. Though he could probably already guess from my tone. Suddenly she looked at us. The perfect one. She looked at my neighbour for just a fraction of a second, and her dark eyes flickered to mine. Long eyes, angled up at the corners, thick lashes. She looked away quickly, faster than I could, though I dropped my stare as soon as they glanced our way. I could feel the patches of red starting to bloom in my face. In that brief flash of a glance, her face wasn't interested at all. It was like he had called her name, and she'd looked up in an involuntary response, already having decided not to answer. My neighbour laughed once, uncomfortable, looking down at the table like I did. He muttered his name. He muttered his answer under his breath. Those are the Cullens and the Hales. Edith and Eleanor Cullen. Jessamine and Royal Hale. The one who just left was Archie Cullen. They live with Dr. Cullen and her husband. I hope for all the Twilight fans you just enjoyed the reading of all of those names. I glanced sideways at the perfect girl, who was looking at her tray now, picking a bagel to pieces with thin, pale fingers. Her mouth was moving very quickly, her full lips barely opening. The other three looked away, but I still thought she might be speaking quietly to them. Weird names, old-fashioned. The kind of names grandparents had, like mine. Maybe that was the thing here, small-town names. And then I finally remembered that my neighbour was called Jeremy, a totally normal name. There were 2 kids named Jeremy in the history class back home. They're all very good looking. What an understatement. Yeah, Jeremy agreed with another laugh. They're all together, though. Royal and Eleanor, Archie and Jessamine. Like dating, you know? And they lived together. He snickered and wagged his eyebrows suggestively. I didn't know why, but his reaction made me want to defend them. Maybe just because he sounded so judgmental. But what could I say? I don't know anything about them. Which ones are the Cullens, I asked, wanting to change the tone but not the subject. They don't look related. Well, I mean, sort of. Oh, they're not. Dr. Cullen is really young, early 30s. The Cullen kids are all adopted. The Hales, the Blondes, are brother and sister. Twins, I think. And there's some kind of foster kids. They look old for foster kids. They are now. Royal and Jessamine are both 18. But they've been with Mr. Cullen since they were little. He's their uncle, I think. That's actually kind of amazing. For them to take care of all those kids when they're so young and everything. I guess so, Jeremy said, though it sounded like he'd rather not say anything positive, as if he didn't like the doctor and her husband for some reason. The way he was looking at their adopted kids, I could guess there might be some jealousy involved. I think Dr. Cullen can't have any kids, though, he added, as if that somehow made what they were doing any less admirable. Through all this conversation, I couldn't keep my eyes away from the strange family for more than a few seconds at a time. They continued to look at the walls and not eat. Have they always lived in Forks? I asked. How could I never have noticed them during my summers here? No! They moved down 2 years ago from somewhere in Alaska. I felt a strange wave of pity and relief. Pity because, as beautiful as they were still outsiders, not accepted. Relief that I wasn't the only newcomer here, and definitely not the most interesting thing by any standard. Hi, Mousy. Hi, Georgia, I love you. Hi, welcome in. I'm glad to see you. As I examined them again, the perfect girl, one of the Cullens, looked up and met my gaze, this time with obvious curiosity. As I immediately looked away, I thought that our look held some kind of unanswered expectation. Thank you, Mousy. Which one is the girl with the reddish-brown hair? I asked. I tried to glance casually in that direction, like I was just checking out the cafeteria. She was still staring at me, but not gawking like the other kids had today. She had this frustrated expression I didn't understand. I looked down again. That's Edith. She's hot, sure, but don't waste your time. She doesn't go out with anyone. Apparently none of the guys here are good enough for her. Jeremy said sourly, then grunted. Wondered how many times she turned him down. I pressed my lips together to hide a smile, then I glanced at her again. Edith. Her name, her face was turned away. But I'd thought from the shape of her cheek that she might be smiling too. After a few more minutes, the four of them left the table together. They were seriously all graceful. Even the golden prom king. It was a strange thing to watch them in motion together. Edith didn't look at me again. Hi, Fro. Hi. Listening to my body and going to nap. Chris always loved me to sleep. Oh, there is a sleep channel point redeem that you can do now. So if you would like to use this stream to sleep, there is a option to let us know. Appreciate you all. I'll take a sip. We are now on page 23 of the book. Have a good sleep, Harry. Thank you for coming in. Rest well. I sat at the table with Jeremy and his friends longer than I would have thought if I'd been sitting alone. I didn't want to be late for class on my first day. One of my new acquaintances, who politely reminded me his name was Alan, had biology 2 with me the next hour. We walked to the class together in silence. He was probably shy like me. When we entered the classroom, Alan went to sit at the black-topped lab table exactly like the ones I was used to at home. He already had a neighbour. In fact, all the tables were filled but one. Next to the centre aisle, I recognised Edith Cullen by her unusual metallic hair, sitting next to that single open seat. My heart started pounding a little faster than usual. As I walked down the aisle to do my required intro for the teacher and get my slip signed, I was watching her, trying to make it covert. Just as I passed, she suddenly went rigid in her seat. Her face jerked up towards mine so fast it surprised me, staring with the strangest expression. It was more than angry, it was furious, hostile. I looked away, stunned, going red again. I stumbled over a book in the walkway and had to catch myself on the edge of the table. The girl sitting there giggled. I'd been right about the eyes. They were black, coal black. Mrs. Banner signed my slip and handed me a book with no nonsense about introductions and no mention about my full name. I could tell we were going to get along. Of course, she had no choice but to send me to the one open seat in the middle of the room. I kept my eyes down as I went to sit by her, confused and awkward, wondering what I could have done to earn the antagonistic glare she'd given me. I didn't look up as I set my book on the table and took my seat, but I saw her posture change from the corner of my eye. She was leaning away from me, sitting on the extreme edge of her chair and averting her face like she smelled something bad. Inconspicuously, I sniffed. My shirt smelled like laundry detergent. How could that be offensive? I scooted my chair to the right, giving her as much space as I could. I tried to pay attention to the teacher. The lecture was on cellular anatomy, something I'd already studied. I took notes carefully anyway, always looking down. I couldn't stop myself from shooting the occasional glance at the strange girl next to me. Throughout the entire class, she never relaxed her stiff position on the chair, sitting as far away from me as possible, with her hair hiding most of her face. Her hand was clenched into a fist on top of her left thigh, tendons standing out under the pale skin. This too, she never relaxed. She had the sleeves of her white henley pushed up to her elbows, and her forearm flexed with surprisingly hard muscle beneath her pale skin. I couldn't help but notice how perfect that skin was. Not one freckle, not one scar. The class seemed to drag on longer than the rest. Was it because the day was finally ending? Or because I was waiting for her tight fist to loosen? It never did. She continued to sit so still it looked like she wasn't even breathing. What was wrong with her? Was this how she usually acted? I questioned my quick judgment on Jeremy's sour grapes at lunch today. Maybe he wasn't just resentful. This couldn't have anything to do with me. She didn't know me from Adam. Mrs. Banner passed some quizzes back to the class when the class was almost done. She handed me one to give to the girl. I glanced at the top automatically. 100%. And I'd been spelling her name wrong in my head. It was Edith, not Edith. I'd never seen it spelled that way, but it fit her better. For reference, that's Edith with a Y, not Edith with an I. Edith. I glanced down at her as I slid the paper over, and then instantly regretted it. She was glaring up at me again, her long black eyes full of revulsion, as I flinched away from the hate radiating from her. Hi, Wimp. Hi, Wimp. Hi, Wimp. No, Gusty. No, Gusty. Edifey. Hi, Wimp. I'm very happy to see you. As I flinched away from the hate radiating from her face, the phrase, "if looks could kill," suddenly ran through my mind. At that moment, the bell rang loudly, making me jump, and Edith Cullen was out of her seat. She moved like a dancer, every perfect line of her slim body in harmony with all the others. Her back to me, she was out the door before anyone else was out of their seat. Yep. 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 I sat frozen in my seat, staring blankly after her. She was so harsh. I began gathering up my things slowly, trying to block out the confusion and guilt that filled me. Why should I feel guilty? I hadn't done anything wrong. How could I have? I hadn't actually even met her. Aren't you both at Swan? A female voice asked. I looked up to see a cute baby-faced girl, her hair carefully flat-ironed into a pale blonde curtain, smiling at me in a friendly way. She obviously didn't think I smelled bad. Bo, I corrected her, smiling back. I'm Michaela. Hi, Michaela. Do you need help? You need help finding your next class? I'm headed to the gym, actually. I think I can find it. That's my next class, too. She seemed thrilled, though it wasn't such a big coincidence in a school this small. We walked to class together. She was a chatterer. She supplied most of the conversation, which made it easy for me. She'd lived in California till she was 10, so she got how I felt about the sun. It turned out she'd been in my English class also. She was the nicest person I'd met today. But as we were entering the gym, she asked, So, did you stab Edith Cullen with a pencil or what? I've never seen her act like that. I winced. I guess I wasn't the only one who'd noticed, and apparently that wasn't Edith Cullen's usual behaviour. I decided to play dumb. Was that the girl I was sat next to in biology? Yeah, she said. She looked like she was in pain or something. I don't know, I responded. I never spoke to her. She's weird. Michaela lingered by me instead of heading to the dressing room. If I got to sit by you, I would have talked to you. She smiled at her. I smiled at her before walking through the boys' locker room door. She was kind and seemed to like me, but that wasn't enough to make me forget the strange hour. The gym teacher, Coach Clapp, found me a uniform, but she didn't make me dress down for today's class. At home, only 2 years of PE were required. Here, PE was mandatory as all 4 years. My own special version of hell. I watched 4 volleyball games running simultaneously, remembering how many injuries I had sustained, uninflicted, playing volleyball. I felt a little nauseated. The final bell rang at last. I walked slowly to the office to return my paperwork. The rain had faded away, but the wind was strong and colder. I zipped my jacket up and shoved my free hand into a pocket. When I walked into the warm office, I almost turned around and walked back out. Edith Cullen stood at the desk in front of me. Impossible not to recognize her tangled bronze hair. She didn't seem to notice the sound of my entrance. I stood pressed against the back wall, waiting for the balding receptionist to be free. She was arguing with him in a low, velvety voice. I quickly picked up the gist of the argument. She was trying to trade from 6th hour biology to another time. Any other time. This could not be about me. It had to be something else. Something had happened before I got to the biology room. The look on her face must have been about some other's problem. It was impossible that a stranger could take such a sudden, intense dislike to me. I wasn't interesting enough to be worth that strong of a reaction. The door opened again, and the cold wind suddenly gusted through the room, rustling the papers on the desk, waving through my hair. The girl who came in merely stepped to the desk, placed a note in the wire basket and walked out again. but Edith Cullen's back stiffened, and she turned slowly to glare at me. Her face was ridiculously perfect, not even one tiny flaw to make her seem human, with piercing, hate-filled eyes. For an instant, I felt the oddest thrill of genuine fear, rising the hair on my arms, as if she were going to pull a gun out and shoot me. The look only lasted a second, but it was colder than the freezing wind. She turned back to the receptionist. "Never mind, then," she said quickly in a voice like silk. "I can see that it's impossible. Thank you so much for your help." And she turned on her heel without another look at me and disappeared out the door. I went robotically into the desk, my face white for once instead of red, and handed him the signed slip. "How'd your first day go, son?" he asked. "Fine," I lied. "Fine," I lied, my voice cracking. I could see I hadn't convinced him. When I got to the truck, it was almost the last car in the lot. It seemed like a haven, already the closest thing to home I had in this wet green hell. I sat inside for a while, just staring out the windshield blankly. But soon I was cold enough to want the heater, so I turned the key in the engine and roared to life. I headed back to Charlie's house, trying to think of nothing at all. And that brings an end to chapter 1. I'm going to take a sip of my drink and take a little break for a moment before I continue reading on. Obviously, we're not going to finish this tonight. That was never the intention. We were never going to get through this entire thing tonight. But we'll definitely do another chapter and see how we feel from there. Yes, I'll be back in a few minutes. Maybe I'll get a refill of my drink. I'll see you then. Ta-ta. I'm back. Sorry, I didn't realise that the music wouldn't play on the BRB screen. Sorry, I didn't realise. It's my bad. It's my bad. I didn't know. I forgot that the BRBs... I've set the background music playing right now to the game audio so that it will play in the VODs, but I forgot that game audio doesn't come through on the BRB screen. Looney, hi Looney. Hi Looney, hope you're doing well today. Stop. Stop. Let me go through quick and give some shout outs to some of the lovely people here. But yes, thank you all very much for dropping in and being here with me today for this nice quiet time. Thank you for the hydrate, Looney. I went and refilled my water with some of the... Let me scroll back up through chat. Filtered with some of the filtered water. So... very nice. Now, I should mention as well, I'll probably mention again at the end of the stream, but I'll mention now we're on a little break. I'm going away tomorrow until Wednesday, so for the next few days I won't be streaming. So this will be the last stream until at least Wednesday. I might do a stream the evening I come back. We'll have to see. But yeah, look forward to it. Where am I off to? I'm off to Liverpool for a couple of days to visit family. Have fun. Thank you. Thank you. Don't miss me too much while I'm gone. Right. So we've just finished chapter 1. Aw, that'd be very sweet. That'd be very sweet. But I'm only there for a short time. We've got a pretty packed schedule, so I wouldn't be free much, I'm afraid. But hopefully I'll be able to visit that side of the country again at some point soon, so when I will have more time spare, so okay. We have now made it to chapter 2. Chapter 1 was 28 pages. I don't know how many chapters there actually are in this book. Let me have a... 20 chapters in this book. How many pages are there? 508 pages. 508 pages. Okay. 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 It's time to continue. Chapter 2. Open book. The next day was better, and worse. It was better because it wasn't raining yet, though the clouds were dense and black. It was easier because I knew better what to expect of the day. Michaela came to sit by me in English, and walked with me to my next class. The chess club Erica glaring at her all the way there. That was kind of flattering. People didn't scare me quite as much as they had yesterday. Oh, catch. Oh, also, I will say, our lovely Looney in chat, Mogul Moon, who I've just shouted out, is doing a special stream tomorrow, I believe. So, You should go and give her a lot of support as well. People didn't stare at me quite as much as they had yesterday. I sat with a big group at lunch that included Michaela, Erica, Jeremy, Alan, and several other people whose names and faces I now remembered. I began to feel like I might be treading water instead of drowning in it. It was worse because I was tired. I still couldn't sleep with the rain beating on the window. It was worse because Miss Varner called on me in trig when my hand wasn't raised and I had the wrong answer. It was miserable because I had to play volleyball, and the one time I didn't dodge out of the way of the ball, I hit two of my teammates in the head with one bad volley. And it was worse because Edith Cullen wasn't in school at all. All morning I was trying not to think about lunch, not wanting to remember those hate-filled stares. Part of me wanted to confront her and demand to know what her problem was. While I was lying awake in bed, I even imagined out what I would say. But I knew myself too well to think I would really have the guts to do it. Maybe if she hadn't been so abnormally beautiful. But when I walked into the cafeteria with Jeremy, trying to keep my eyes from sweeping the place for her, and totally failing, I saw that her 4 adopted siblings were sitting together at the same table as before, and she was not with them. Michaela intercepted us and steered us to her table. Jeremy seemed thrilled by the attention, and his friends quickly joined us. I tried to tune into the conversations around me, but I was still uncomfortable, waiting for Edith's arrival. I hoped that she would simply ignore me when she came, and prove that I was making a big deal out of nothing. She didn't come, and I got more and more tense. I walked to biology with more confidence when, by the end of lunch, she still hadn't showed. Michaela, who was starting to seem weirdly, territorial about me, walked by my side to class. I hesitated for a second at the door, but Edith Cullen wasn't there either. I exhaled and went to my seat. Michaela followed, talking about an upcoming trip to the beach. She lingered by my desk till the bell rang, and then she smiled at me wistfully and went to sit by a boy with braces and something close to a bowl cut. 1 second, quick. There's the last shout out I need to give. Where was I? Bolka. I found out I was looking on the wrong page. I didn't want to be arrogant, but I was pretty sure she was into me, which was a strange feeling. Girls hadn't noticed me much at home. I wondered if I wanted her to like me more. I wondered if I wanted her to like me. She was sort of pretty and everything, but her attention made me feel a little uncomfortable. Why was that? Because she'd picked me instead of the other way around? That was a stupid reason. Ego running wild, like it had to be my decision first. Still, it was not as stupid as the other possibility I thought of. I really hoped it wasn't because of the time I'd spent staring at Edith Cullen yesterday. But I was kind of afraid that was it. Which was about the stupidest thing possible, really. If I based my reaction to a girl's looks off of face like Edith's, I was doomed. That was fantasy, not reality. But I was glad that I had the desk to myself, and Edith wasn't here. I told myself that again and again. I still couldn't get rid of this annoying feeling that I was the reason she was gone. It was ridiculous and egotistical again, to think that I could affect anyone that much. It was impossible. but I couldn't stop worrying about it. When the school day was finally done and the patches of red were fading from my face from the latest volleyball incident, I changed quickly back into my jeans and heavy sweater. I rushed from the locker room, glad to find that I had successfully evaded Michaela for the moment. I hurried out to the parking lot. It was crowded with fleeing students. I got in my truck and dug through my backpack to make sure I still had what I needed. It was no secret that Charlie couldn't cook much besides fried eggs and bacon. Last night I requested that I be assigned kitchen detail for the duration of my stay. He was willing enough to let me stay over. A quick search revealed that he had no food in the house, so I had my grocery list and the cash from the jar in the cupboard labelled food money, and I was headed to the thriftway. I gunned the thunderous engine to life, ignoring the heads that turned in my direction, and backed into a place in the line of cars that were waiting to exit the parking lot. As I waited, trying to pretend that the ear-splitting rumble was coming from someone else's car, I saw the two Collins and the two Hale twins walking up to their car. It was the shiny new Volvo. Of course. I hadn't noticed their clothes before. I'd been too mesmerized by their faces. Now that I looked, it wasn't that they were all wearing stuff that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Attractive as they all were, they could have worn garbage sacks and started a trend. It seemed like too much for them to have both looks and money. Though, as far as I could tell, life worked that way for most of the time. It didn't look like it brought them any but popularity here. But I couldn't really believe that. The isolation had to be something they chose. I couldn't imagine any door their beauty wouldn't open for them. They looked at my noisy truck as I passed them, just like everyone else, except they weren't anything like anyone else. I saw that the big blonde guy, Royal it must be, figured. Anyway, Royal had his hand casually on the hip of the really tall girl with the dark curly hair, who looked like she was just as familiar with the weight room as he was. He had to be a good 2 inches taller than even I was. But he still had a half inch on her, he only had a half inch on her. Though he was obviously pretty sure of himself, I was still kind of surprised he felt comfortable doing that. Not that she wasn't hot. She was super mega hot, but not approachable. Like, not even The Rock would dare to whistle at her. I know The Rock is mentioned in this, holy shit. Not even The Rock would dare whistle at her. If you know what I mean. The blonde girl caught me looking, and the way her eyes narrowed made me turn straight ahead and punch the gas. The truck didn't go any faster. The engine just grumbled even louder. The thriftway was not far from the school, and a few streets south off the highway. It was nice to be inside the supermarket. It felt normal. I did most of the shopping at home, and I fell easily into the pattern of the familiar job. The store was big enough inside that I couldn't hear the tapping of the rain on the roof to remind me where I was. When I got home, I unloaded all the groceries, reorganizing the cupboards till everything was in a place that made sense. Charlie's system was kind of haphazard. I hoped Charlie wouldn't mind that he wasn't OCD about his kitchen the way I was. Once I was satisfied with the organisation, I worked on the prep for dinner. I've kind of a sixth sense about my mom. I realised, as I was sticking to the marinade-covered steak into the fridge, that I hadn't let her know I'd made it yesterday. She was probably freaking out. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time and fired up the old computer in my room. It took a minute to wheeze to life, then I had to wait for the connection. Once I was online, 3 messages showed up in my inbox. The first was from yesterday, while I was still en route. Bo, my mom wrote. Write me as soon as you get in. Tell me how your flight was. Is it raining? I miss you already. I almost finished packing for Florida, but I can't find my pink blouse. Do you know where I put it? Phil said hi. Mom. Vibe check? I sighed and went to the next. It was sent 6 hours after the first. Bo, why haven't you emailed me yet? What are you waiting for? Mom. The last is from this morning. Beaufort Swan, if I haven't heard from you by 5:30 p.m. today, I'm calling Charlie. I checked the clock. I still had an hour, but Mom was known for jumping the gun. Mom, calm down. I'm writing right now. Don't do anything crazy. Bo. I sent that and then stared, and then started the next, beginning with a lie. Everything's great. Of course it's raining. I was waiting for something to write about. School isn't bad, just a little repetitive. I met some okay kids who sat by me at lunch. Your shirt is at the dry cleaners. You were supposed to pick it up Friday. Charlie bought me a truck. Can you believe it? It's awesome. It's old, but really sturdy, which is good, for me. I miss you too. I'll write again soon, but I'm not going to check my inbox every 5 minutes. Relax. Breathe. I love you. Bo. I heard the front door bang open, and I hurried downstairs to take the potatoes out and put the steak into broil. Bo? My father called out when he heard me on the stairs. Who else? I thought to myself. Hey Dad, welcome home. Thanks. He hung up his gun belt and stepped out of his boots as I moved around the kitchen. As far as I was aware, he'd never shot the gun on the job, but he kept it ready. When I'd come here as a child, he would always remove the bullets as soon as he walked in the door. I guess he considered me old enough now to not shoot myself by accident, and not depressed enough to shoot myself on purpose. What's for dinner? He asked warily. Mom was an imaginative cook, when she bothered, and her experiments weren't always edible. I was surprised and sad, and he seemed to remember that far back. Steak and potatoes, I answered. Charlie looked relieved. He obviously felt awkward standing in the kitchen doing nothing. He limbered into the living room to watch TV while I worked. Gotta work. Gotta make that money make purse. I think we were both more comfortable that way. I made a salad while the steak cooked and set the table. I called him when dinner was ready, and he sniffed appreciatively as he walked into the room. Smells good, boy. Thanks. We ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't awkward. Both of us liked quiet. In some ways, we were good roommates. So, how did you like school? Make any friends? He asked as he was taking seconds. Well, I have a few classes with this guy named Jeremy. I sit with his friends at lunch, and there's this girl, Michaela, who's friendly. Everyone seems pretty nice. With one outstanding exception. Oh, that must be Michaela Newton. Nice girl, nice family. Her dad owns the sporting goods store just outside of town. Thank you, Mousy. He makes a good living off of all the backpackers who come through here. We ate in silence for a minute. Do you know the Cullen family? I asked, trying to sound casual. Dr. Cullen's family? Sure, she's a great woman. The kids, are a little different. They don't seem to fit in very well at school. I was surprised to see Charlie's face get red, the way it does when he's angry. people in this town," he muttered. "Dr. Cullen is a brilliant surgeon who could probably work in any hospital in the world, make 10 times the salary she gets here." He continued, getting louder. "We're lucky to have her. Lucky that her husband wanted to live in a small town. She's an asset to the community, and all those kids are well behaved and polite. I had my doubts when they first moved in, of all those adopted teenagers. I thought we might have some problems with them. But they're all very mature. I haven't had one speck of trouble from any of them. That's more than I can say for the children of some folks who have lived in this town for generations. They stick together the way a family should. Camping trips every other weekend. Just because they're newcomers, people have to talk." It was the longest speech I'd ever heard Charlie make. He must feel very strongly about whatever people were saying. I backpedaled. "They seemed nice enough to me. I just noticed they kept to themselves. They're all very attractive," I added, trying to be more complimentary. "You should see the doctor," Charlie said, laughing. "It's a good thing she's happily married. A lot of hospital staff would have a hard time concentrating on their work with her around." We lapsed back into silence as we finished eating. He cleared the table while I started on the dishes. He went back to the TV, and after I finished washing the dishes by hand, no dishwasher, I went upstairs to work on my math homework. I could feel a tradition we were making. That night it was finally quiet. I fell asleep fast, exhausted. The rest of the week was uneventful. I got used to the routine of my classes. By Friday I was able to recognize, if not name, almost all the kids at school. In gym, the people on my team learned not to send the ball in my direction. I stayed out of their way. Edith Cullen didn't come back to school. Every day I watched, pretending I wasn't looking until the rest of the Cullens entered the cafeteria without her. Then I could relax and join in with the conversation. It was mostly around a trip to the La Push Ocean Park in 2 weeks that Michaela was getting together. I was invited, and I agreed to go, more out of politeness than a strong urge to hit the beach. I believed beaches should be hot, and aside from the ocean, dry. By Friday I was totally comfortable entering my biology class, no longer worried that Edith would show. For all I knew, she'd dropped out of school. I tried not to think about her, but I totally couldn't erase the worry that I was responsible for her continued absence, ridiculous as it seemed. Aren't you hungry?" Jeremy asked. "Actually, I feel a little sick," I said. He shuffled a few steps away from me. I waited for them to get their food and then followed them to the table, my eyes anywhere but the back corner of the cafeteria. I drank my soda slowly, stomach churning. Twice Michaela asked, with a concerned tone that seemed a little over the top, how I was feeling. I told her it was nothing. I was wondering if I should play it up and escape to the nurse's office for the next hour. Ridiculous. I shouldn't have to run away. Why was I being such a coward? Was it so bad to be glared at? It wasn't like she was actually going to stab me with a knife. Did I miss something? I missed a page. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. I missed a page. My bad. Let me go back a bit. Sorry. By Friday, I was totally comfortable entering my biology class, no longer worried that Edith would show. For all I knew, she'd dropped out of school. I tried not to think about her, but I totally couldn't erase the worry that I was somehow responsible for her continued absence, ridiculous as it seemed. My first weekend in Forks continued without incident. Charlie worked most of the time. I wrote my mom more fake, cheerful emails, got ahead on my homework, and cleaned up the house. Obviously, OCD wasn't a problem for Charlie. I drove to the library Saturday, I didn't even bother to get a card. There wasn't anything interesting I hadn't read. I would have to visit Olympia or Seattle soon and find a good bookstore. Oh no! Sorry. I'm so sorry about that. That must have been so loud, I'm so sorry. Let me speak. I'm so sorry. I wondered idly what kind of gas mileage that truck got, and winced at the thought. The rain stayed soft over the weekend. Quiet, as I was about to sleep. People greeted me in the parking lot. So I was able to sleep. People greeted me in the parking lot Monday morning. I didn't know all their names, but I smiled at everyone. It was colder this morning, but at least it wasn't raining. In English, Michaela took her now normal seat by my side. We had a pop quiz on Wuthering Heights. It was straightforward, very easy. All in all, I was feeling a lot more comfortable than I had thought I would feel by this point. More comfortable than I had ever expected to feel here. When we walked out of class, the air was full of swirling bits of white. I could feel people shouting excitedly to each other. The wind was freezing against my cheeks, my nose. Wow, Michaela said. It's snowing. I looked at the little cotton fluffs that were building up along the sidewalk and swirling erratically past my face. Ugh. Snow. That went my good day. She seemed surprised. I don't like snow. Snow means it's too cold for rain, obviously. Besides, I thought it was supposed to come down in flakes, each one unique and all that. These just look like the ends of Q-tips. Hadn't you ever seen snowfall before? She asked incredulously. Sure I have. I paused. On TV. Michaela laughed, and then a big wet ball of dripping snow smacked into the back of her head. We both turned to see where it came from. I suspected Erica, who was walking away, her back towards us, in the wrong direction for her next class. Michaela had the same idea. She bent over and began scraping together a pile of white mush. I'll see you at lunch, okay? I'll see you at lunch, okay? I kept walking as I spoke. The last thing I wanted was a wad of dirty ice melting down my neck for the rest of the day. She just nodded, her eyes on Erica's back. I kept a sharp lookout on the way of the cafeteria with Jeremy. After Spanish, mush balls were flying everywhere. I had a binder in my hands, ready to use it as a shield. Jeremy thought I was hilarious, but something in my expression kept him from lobbing a snowball at me himself. Michaela caught up to us as we walked in the doors, laughing, her usually sleek hair turning frizzy from the wet. She and Jeremy were talking animatedly about the snow fight as we got in line to buy food. I glanced towards the table in the corner out of habit, and then I froze where I stood. There were 5 people at the table. Jeremy pulled my arm. Hey, Bo, what do you mean? I looked down. Hey, Bo, what do you want? I looked down. My ears were hot. I had no reason to feel self-conscious, I reminded myself. I hadn't done anything wrong. What's with Bo? Michaela asked Jeremy. Nothing, I answered. I grabbed a soda bottle as I caught up to the rest of the line. Aren't you hungry? Jeremy asked. Actually, I feel a little sick, I said. He shuffled a few steps away from me. I waited for them to get their food and then followed them to the table. My eyes anywhere but the back corner of the cafeteria. I drank my soda slowly, stomach churning. Twice Michaela asked, with a concerned tone that seemed a little over the top, how I was feeling. I told her it was nothing, but I was wondering if I should play it up and escape to the nurse's office for the next hour. Ridiculous. I shouldn't have to run away. Why was I being such a coward? Was it so bad to be glared at? It wasn't like she was actually going to stab a knife in me. I decided to allow one glance at the Cullen family table, just to read the mood. I kept my head turned away and glanced out of the side of my eye. None of them were looking this way. I turned my head a little. They were laughing. Edith, Jessamine, and Eleanor all had their hair entirely saturated with melting snow. Archie and Royal were leaning away as Eleanor flipped her dripping hair toward them, leaving a wide arc of splatters across the floor. Across the front of their jackets. They were enjoying the snowy day, just like everyone else. Only they looked more like a scene from a movie than the rest of us. But aside from the laughter and playfulness, there was something different. I couldn't quite figure out what that difference was. I examined Edith, comparing her to my memory of last week. Her skin was less pale, I decided. Flushed by the snow fight, maybe. The circles under her eyes much less noticeable. Her hair was darker, wet and slicked down against her head. And there was something else. I forgot to pretend I wasn't staring as I tried to put my finger on the change. What are you staring at, Bo? Jeremy asked. At that precise moment, Edith's eyes flashed over to meet mine. A good time to hydrate and stretch, I think. Oof, my bones. My achy breaky bones. Oh. How are we doing so far? Ooh. Give me a second. I'm gonna go give my dog a little kiss on her little forehead. I'm back. Hi. I turned my head completely towards Jeremy, shifting my shoulders in his direction too. Jeremy leaned away, surprised by my sudden invasion of his personal space. I was sure, though, in the instant our eyes had met, that she didn't look angry or disgusted like she had the last time I'd seen her. She just looked curious again, unsatisfied in some way. Edith Cullen is staring at you, Jeremy said, looking over my shoulder. She doesn't look angry, does she? I couldn't help asking. No. Jeremy looked confused. Then he suddenly smiled. What did you do, ask her out? No, I've never even talked to her. I just don't think she likes me very much, I admitted. I kept my body angled toward Jeremy, but the back of my neck had goosebumps, like I could see, like I could feel her eyes on me. The Cullens don't like anybody. Well, they didn't notice anyone enough like them. They don't notice anyone enough to like them. But she's still staring at you. Stop looking at her, I insisted. He snickered, but finally looked away. Michaela interrupted us then. She was planning an epic battle of the blizzard in the parking lot after school and wanted us to join. Jeremy agreed enthusiastically. The way he looked at Michaela left a little doubt that he would be up for anything she suggested. I kept silent. I wondered how many years I would have to live in Forks before I was bored enough to find frozen water exciting. Probably much longer than I planned to be here. For the rest of the lunch hour, I very carefully kept my eyes on my own table. Edith didn't look like she was planning to murder me anymore, so it was no big thing to go to biology. My stomach twisted at the thought of sitting next to her again. I didn't really want to walk to class with Michaela as usual. She seemed to be the popular girl. She seemed to be the popular target for snowballs. But when we got to the door, everyone besides me groaned in unison. It was raining, washing all traces of the snow away in clear, icy ribbons down the side of the walkway. I pulled my hood up, hiding my smile. I would be free to go straight home after gym. Michaela kept up a string of complaints on the way to Building 4. Once inside the classroom, I was relieved that Edith's chair was still empty. It gave me a minute to settle myself. Mrs. Banner was walking around the room, distributing one microscope and box slides to each table. Class started a few minutes before it started, and the room buzzed with conversation. I kept my eyes away from the door, doodling idly on the cover of my notebook. I heard very clearly when the chair next to me moved, but I kept my eyes focused on the pattern I was drawing. "Hello," said a quiet, musical voice. I looked up, shocked that she was speaking to me. She was sitting as far away from me as the desk allowed, but her chair was angled towards me. Her hair was dripping wet, tangled. Even so, she looked like she'd just finished shooting a commercial. Her perfect face was friendly, open, a slight smile on her full pink lips. But her long eyes were careful. "My name is Edith Cullen," she continued. "I didn't have a chance to properly introduce myself last week. You must be Bo Swan." My mind was swirling with confusion. Had I made up the whole thing? She was totally polite now. I had to say something. She was waiting, but I couldn't think of anything normal to say. "How do you know my name?" I stammered. She laughed softly. "Oh, I think everyone knows your name. The whole town's been waiting for you to arrive." I frowned, though it wasn't as if I hadn't guessed as much. "No," I persisted like an idiot. "I meant, why did you call me Bo?" She seemed confused. "Do you prefer Beaufort?" "Absolutely not," I said. "But I think my dad, must call me that behind my back. That's what everyone here seemed to know me as." The more I tried to explain, the more moronic it sounded. "Oh!" She let it drop. I looked away awkwardly. Luckily, Mrs. Banner started class at that moment. I tried to concentrate as she explained the lab we would be doing today. The slides in the box were out of order. Working as lab partners, we had to separate the slides of onion root tip cells into the phases of mitosis they represented and label them accordingly. We weren't supposed to use our books. In 20 minutes, she would be coming around to see who had it right. "Get started," she commanded. "Ladies first, partner," Edith asked. I looked to see her smiling, a dimpled smile, so perfect that I could only stare at her like a fool. She raised her eyebrows. Sure, go ahead, I sputtered, as her eyes flashed to the splotches blooming across my neck, my cheeks. Why couldn't my blood just stay in my veins where it belonged? She looked away sharply, yanking the microscope to her side of the table. My book has a little red mark in it. Nice. Sorry, I just noticed that. My book has a little red mark on the page. Looks like a little hair. She studied the first slide for a quarter of a second, maybe less. Prophase. She switched out the slide for the next, then paused and looked up at me. Or did you want to check? She challenged. No, I'm good, I said. She wrote the word prophase neatly on the top line of our worksheet. Even her handwriting was perfect, like she'd taken classes in penmanship or something. Did anyone still do that? She barely glanced through the microscope at the second slide, then wrote anaphase on the next line, looping her A like it was calligraphy, like she was addressing a wedding invitation. I'd had to do the invitation for my mom's wedding. I printed the labels in a fancy script font that didn't look like anything else. That didn't look anything as elegant as Edith's handwriting. She moved the next slide into place, while I took advantage of her diverted attention to stare. So close up you think I'd be able to see something. A hint of a pimple, a stray eyebrow hair, a pore, something wrong with her. But there was nothing. Suddenly her head flipped up, eyes to the front of the class. Just before Mrs. Banner called out, Miss Cullen? Yes, Mrs. Banner. Edith slid the microscope towards me as she spoke. Perhaps you should let Mr. Swan have an opportunity to learn. Of course, Miss Banner. Mrs. Banner. Edith turned and gave me a, well, go ahead then, look. I bent down to look through the eyepiece. I could sense she was watching. Only fair, considering I'd been ogling her, but it made me feel awkward. Just like inclining my head was a clumsy move. At least the slide wasn't difficult. Metaphase, I said. Do you mind if I look? She asked as I started to remove the slide. Her hand caught mine to stop me. As she was speaking, her fingers were ice cold, like she'd been holding them in a snowdrift before class. That wasn't why I jerked my hand away so quickly. When she touched me, it stung my hand like a low-voltage electric shock. I'm sorry, she murmured, quickly pulling her hand back. Though she continued to reach for the microscope, I watched her, a little dazed, as she exclaimed as she examined the slide for another tiny fraction of a second. Metaphase, she agreed, and slid the microscope back to me. I tried to exchange slides, but they were too small. All my fingers were too big, and I ended up dropping both. One fell on the table and the other over the edge, but Edith caught it before it could hit the ground. Ugh, I exhaled, mortified. Sorry. Oh, the last is no mystery regardless. Her tone was right on the edge of laughter. But of the joke, again. Edith calligraphied the word metaphase and telophase onto the last two lines of the worksheet. We were finished before anyone else was close. I could see Michaela and her partner comparing two slides again and again, and another pair had their book open under the table, which left me with nothing to do but try not to look at her, unsuccessfully. I glanced down, and she was staring at me, that same strange look of frustration in her eyes. Suddenly I identified that elusive difference in her face. Bum 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 bum. Did you get contacts? I blurted out. She seemed puzzled by the atropos of nothing question. No. Oh, I mumbled. I thought there was something different about your eyes. She shrugged and looked away. In fact, I knew there was something different. I had not forgotten one detail of that first time she glared at me like she wanted me dead. I could still see the flat black colour of her eyes, so jarring against the background of her pale skin. Today, her eyes were a completely different colour, a strange gold, darker than butterscotch, but with the same warm tone. I didn't understand how that was possible, unless she was lying for some reason about the contacts. Or maybe Fawkes was making me crazy in the literal sense of the word. I looked down. Her hands were clenched into fists again. Sorry. Just restarting the music. Mrs. Banner came to our table, then looking over our shoulders to glance at the completed lab, and then stared more intently to check the answers. So, Edith, Mrs. Banner began. Bo identified half of the slides, Edith said before Mrs. Banner could finish. Mrs. Banner looked at me now. Her expression was skeptical. Have you done this lab before? She asked. I shrug. Not with onion root. Whitefish blastula? Yeah. Mrs. Banner nodded. Were you in an advanced placement program in Phoenix? Yes. Well, she said after a moment, I guess it's good that you two are lab partners. She mumbled something else I couldn't hear as she walked away. After she left, I started doodling on my notebook again. It's too bad about the snow, isn't it? Edith asked. I had the odd feeling she was forcing herself to make small talk with me. It was like she had heard my conversation with Jeremy at lunch and was trying to prove me wrong, which was impossible. I was turning paranoid. Have a good sleep, Gusty. Rest well. Thank you. Sleep well, Gusty. Thank you for being here. Not really, I answered honestly, instead of pretending to be normal like everyone else. I was still trying to shake the stupid feeling of suspicion, and I couldn't concentrate on putting up a socially acceptable front. You don't like the cold? It wasn't a question. Or the wet. Forks must be a difficult place for you to live, she mused. You have no idea, I muttered darkly. She looked riveted by my response. For some reason I couldn't imagine. Her face was such a distraction I tried not to look at it any more than courtesy. Sorry. Her face was such a distraction that I tried not to look at it with any more than courtesy absolutely demanded. Why did you come here then? No one had asked me that. Not straight out like she did. Demanding. It's complicated. I think I can keep up, she pressed. I paused for a long moment, and then the mistake of meeting her gaze. Her long, dark eyes confused me, and I answered without thinking. My mother got remarried, I said. That doesn't sound so complex, she disagreed, but her tone was suddenly softer. Why did that happen? When did that happen? Last September. I couldn't keep the sadness out of my voice. Then you don't like him? Edith guessed, her voice still kind. No, Phil is fine. A little young perhaps, but he's a good guy. Then why didn't you stay with them? I couldn't understand her interest, but she continued to stare at me with penetrating eyes, as if my dull life story was somehow vitally important. Phil travels most of the time. He plays ball for a living. I half smiled. Have I heard of him? She asked, smiling in response. Just enough of a hint. Just enough for a hint of the dimples to show. Probably not. He doesn't play well. Just minor league. He moves around a lot. And your mother sent you here so you could travel with him? So that she could travel with him? She said it as an assumption again, not a question. My hunched shoulders straightened automatically. No, she didn't. I sent myself. Her eyebrows pushed together. I don't understand, she admitted, and she seemed more frustrated by the fact that she should be than she should be. She stayed with me at first, but she missed him. It made her unhappy, so I decided it was time to spend some quality time with Charlie. My voice was glum by the time I finished. But now you're unhappy, she pointed out. Oh, there's an ad break coming up in a minute. And? I challenged. That doesn't seem fair, she shrugged, but her eyes were still intense. I laughed once. Haven't you heard? Life isn't fair. I believe I have heard that one somewhere before, she agreed dryly. So that's it, I insisted, wondering why she was still staring at me that way. Her head tilted to the side and her gold eyes seemed to laser right through the surface of my skin. You put on a good show, she said slowly, but I'd be willing to bet you're suffocating more than you let anyone know. I shrugged. I repeat, and? I don't entirely understand you, that's all. I frowned. Why would you want to? That's a good question, she murmured, so quietly that I wondered if she was talking to herself. However, after a few seconds of silence, I decided that was the only answer I was going to get. I'm going to take a moment to have a little break while the ads play. This water is so good. Yes, so, for people who are subscribed and can hear me, I'm going to finish this chapter, and I'm gonna end stream then. Because if I continued on for another chapter, we'd be here for a lot longer. Obviously, that's how it works, but we're already almost 2.5 hours in, and I've got to go to bed and wake up early. So I'm going to finish this chapter I'm reading, and then that'll be it. Kaka ad. Yeah, I know there's an ad. I know. Don't worry, I'll wait for it to end. Thank you for the hydration, Andrews. Don't worry, I am planning to upload this to YouTube after the stream is done. So I'm going to save this VOD as a highlight, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube. So if people want to listen to this again, they would be welcomed to. So, Kaka. That one was for Andrews. Oh, my leg. Okay. Let's continue on now, shall we? It was awkward, just looking at each other, but she didn't look away. I wanted to keep staring at her face, but I was afraid she was wondering what was wrong with me for staring so much. So finally I turned toward the blackboard. She sighed. I glanced back, and she was still looking at me, but her expression was different, a little frustrated and irritated. I'm sorry, I said quickly. Am I annoying you? She shook her head and smiled with half her mouth so that one dimple popped out. No, if anything, I'm annoyed with myself. Why? She cocked her head to the side. Reading people, it usually comes very easily to me. But I can't. I guess I don't quite know what to make of you. Is that funny? I flattened out my grin. More unexpected. My mom always calls me her open book. According to her, you can all but read my thoughts printing out from across my forehead. Her smile vanished and she half glared into my eyes. Not angry like before, just intense. As if she was trying hard to read the printout my mom had seen. Then switching gears just as abruptly, she was smiling again. I suppose I've gotten overconfident. I didn't know what to say to that. Sorry? She laughed, and the sound was like music. I couldn't think of the instrument to compare it to. Her teeth were perfect, no surprise there, and blinding white. Mrs. Banner called the class to order then, and I was relieved to give her my attention. It was a little too intense, making small talk of Edith. I felt dizzy in a strange way. Had I really just detailed my boring life to this bizarre, beautiful girl who might or might not hate me? She seemed almost too interested in what I had to say. But now I could see, from the corner of my eye, that she was leaning away from me again, her hands gripping the edge of the table with unmistakable tension. I tried to focus at Mrs. Banner, went through the lab with transparencies over the... Hang on. I tried to focus as Mrs. Banner went through the lab with transparencies on the overhead projector, but my thoughts were far away from the lecture. When the bell rang, Edith rushed as swiftly and as gracefully from the room as she had last Monday, and, like last Monday, I stared after her with my jaw hanging open. Michaela got to my table almost as quickly. That was awful, she said. They all looked exactly the same. You're lucky you had Edith for a partner. Yeah, she seemed to know her way around an onion root. She was friendly enough today, Michaela commented as we shrugged into our raincoats. She didn't sound happy about it. I tried to make my voice casual. I wonder what was with her last Monday. I couldn't concentrate on Michaela's chatter as we walked to the gym, and PE didn't do much to hold my interest either. Michaela was on my team today. She helped cover my position as well as her own, so I only had to pay attention when it was my turn to serve. My team knew how to get out of the way when I was up. The rain was just a mist as I walked to the parking lot, and I was still pretty damp when I got into the truck. I turned the heat up as high as it could go, for once not caring about the mind-numbing roar of the engine. As I looked around me to make sure I was clear, I noticed the still, white figure. Edith Cullen was leaning against the white door of the Volvo, 3 cars down from me, and staring intently in my direction. The smile was gone, but at least so was the murder, for now anyway. I looked away and threw the truck into reverse, almost hitting a rusty Toyota Corolla in my rush. Lucky for the Toyota, I stomped on the brake in time. It was just the sort of car that my truck wouldn't make scrap metal of. It was just the kind of car that my truck would make scrap metal of. I took a deep breath, still looking out the other side of my car, and cautiously pulled out again. This time I made it. I stared straight ahead as I passed the Volvo, but I could see enough in my peripheral vision to know that she was laughing. And that brings an end to chapter 2 and brings an end to this stream. I gotta find something to use as a bookmark. Do I have anything? I mean, this whole stream I've been using my phone as a bookmark whenever I've needed to. Ooh! I should have a card in here, right? Which ones do I have? Yeah! I got a couple of business cards from Comic-Con from some artists. That seems like a good thing to use as a bookmark. And with that, the reading stream comes to an end. Thank you everyone for being here. If I can be honest, I kind of had low expectations for how this stream would go throughout the entire day. I was expecting it to be quiet, and it was quiet, but quiet in a good way, of people listening. I was expecting it to be quiet in the way of no one would be here. So I appreciate everyone coming by and listening and lurking and sleeping. Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, this will be my last stream for a couple days as I go away. When I'm back, I'll probably continue on with Willow Mist. I may do more reading streams in the future, because I'm enjoying this. I'm really liking doing this. And so I might do more reading streams at another time to continue reading through this book. I was expecting it to be more like a laugh, you know? I was expecting it to be like, huh, funny. Stupid little genderbent Twilight book, huh, stupid. I very quickly got into it. Like, it very quickly sucked me in. Even just as a book, I was really enjoying that. Also, do I have it on here? I don't know if I do have it on here. Hang on. Yes, I do. Donors! On the screen right now, if you can see, are all of the people who donated directly to charity back in Pride Month. This is the reason why I did this stream today. Because people were kind enough to donate. So, I appreciate it very, very much. Yes, stream is coming to an end, Dakota. Thank you all for hanging out here today. I am going to do my best to find someone to raid. Someone who can offer some chill vibes. No. Would be good. I think I know where I'm going to take us. Oh. Never mind. Dakota. Dakota, were you about to raid me? Because I was about to raid you. Aw, thank you for that. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. I just saw you, but I also saw you're almost 11 hours into stream, so yeah. Also, thank you for lurking here while you were streaming. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for almost raiding me. Aw, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, let's see where else I can take her. Let me have a look here quick.
Why?
I want to take us to a stream that all the people lurking would have an okay time with. And not like immediately wake them up.
I'm right here.
I need to get rid of this wall.
I think this is a good place to go. Again, thank you all very much for being here. Hang on, let me just... Ah, I'm behind myself. Hi. Hi. Thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate it very much. Like I said, I will... be uploading this VOD. I'll save it as a highlight and I will upload it to YouTube as well. No, actually, I changed my mind. No, I won't. I was going to take you to someone who did donate, but they're playing Dead by Daylight at the moment, and I figure, as cozy as it can be, hearing people randomly scream in the background isn't the best for trying to sleep. So, right, grab your raid messages. We're going to meet someone lovely who I met through Cozy Oak. So we're going to go raid Nye. Go raid Nye. I'll see you all in a few days. Thank you very much for everything. And I will see you all whenever I next see you. Bye bye, look after yourselves.